How we doing, everybody? Even though I likely know the answer to that question, as most Mets fans, including myself, are not doing all that well right now, as the boys have dropped 10 of their past 11 games, including a very frustrating Game 2 loss against the Braves this past night that we broke down on our latest post-game show, so make sure to check it out should you guys have interest, because in today's Big Mets Update segment, we have a lot to get into as the Mets are adding more reinforcements. Over this past night, around 12 a.m. Eastern, they have officially called up Jonathan Pintaro, and we're going to get into who is Jonathan Pintaro, why the Mets call up a kid all the way from Double-A there to impact him right away at the major league level, the upside, potential downside, and everything between you guys. And you know about Jonathan and what was a very much surprising call up to the major league level this past night, as well as Brooks Raley on the reliever front as well, because we do know that Brooks Raley has been looking sharp, to say the least, to begin his rehab. But how's he fared in his latest outing is what we're going to get into from there. We're going to talk about the Samoan Southpaw Sean Manaea, as he has faced yet again another setback. To what degree is it this time, and when, if at all, will he be facing surgery? That and much more, along with Jesse Winker, as we have some positive news to get into on his front, a bit more from David Stearns' key remarks from this past day, and a whole lot more. So thank you guys kindly for hitting that like and subscribe button as you chime in for our latest form of our Big Mets Update segment. And let me know all your initial reactions in the comments down below to the following topics that we're going to break down today, as well as thanking you guys in advance for hearing from today's video sponsor. All right, Mets fans, let me talk to you on a reel for a second, because like many of you, I too grew up in social settings, especially whether it's friend groups from high school, getting into college, where smoking has always been a commonality, especially cigarette smoke, vaping, cigar smoke, all the more harmful things that obviously are not great to ingest in your body, but we naturally do it anyways for our various reasons. But mainly it's because we have a bad habit. And whether that bad habit is because it's a vice that we turn to out of stress, maybe as a way to get away when you maybe have a little too much time on your hands due to boredom, or maybe it's because of other things, whether you're hanging out with certain friends in social settings that kind of unintentionally peer pressure you, and you find yourself doing whatever it is you're going to find yourself doing. Well, as someone who has been in that category before, I can tell you that I'm very excited to have here Fume, the sponsor of today's video, and they have not only been a game changer for myself, but I know that they will be one for you too, should you guys have interest in this product, because Fume, the sponsor of today's video, is not just another vape, e-cig, or nicotine product. It's something totally different, a simple, satisfying way to replace bad habits, all without inhaling anything harmful. As you guys can see, this is the actual Fume product itself. It's so easy to utilize. You just take this off right here, and inside you will have what you can choose from, various flavors and scents, and I'm going with the crisp mint right now, and pretty much it's just essential oils in like a soaked little vial here that you place inside your Fume, and then you put this back on top. Easy as that. You make sure that there's airflow at the bottom, because you can close this fully, but you want to make sure it's open. And then you go in for a drag just like you would for a vape. And there's nothing that's going to come out because it's not actual smoke. You're not actually inhaling anything. It's just you get the essence of, especially as if you're hitting a vape, in my humble opinion. As someone who has utilized them in the past as well, when I was more of a delinquent, I can tell you that this really does replicate very well that type of effect, especially when you're just trying to lift something up, put up to your mouth, and get that drag feeling. Or if you say you're having, more of those tics, more of those fidgety feelings where you just need to have it resting on your lips, cheeks, whatever it might be. This is a really, really easy alternative, in my opinion, to utilize. It's simple, and the most important thing is that it's safe and it tastes really good. Crisp mint is my favorite flavor of the bunch to utilize, and it does last and stay fresh for quite a bit, because the one that I've had in now has been in for a couple weeks and as good as new as if I first opened the package. And with over 500,000 people who have already added Fume to their daily routine, and I totally get why right now, folks. It's simple, satisfying, and doesn't come with any of the downsides of smoking or vaping, as we just alluded to. And right now, if you order the Journey Pack utilizing my promo code WardyNYM, you'll get free Fume topper. What that is right here, guys, this little Fume topper. It's a nice kind of comfortable silicone type base, I'd imagine, there, that goes around where you're going to be actually taking these so-called drags. It's comfortable. I certainly like it as well, especially if I'm fidgeting and want to nibble on it. That's just a me thing, not a you thing. But guys, if you want to find yourself, especially thinking of getting out of changing some of your bad habits, this is the perfect first step. Go to tryfume.com/WardyNYM or scan the QR code on the screen to grab yours today. All right, folks, now to get right into this, let's first begin with the latest call up for this Mets team, if you will, because this was, again, something that I did not expect. And I do realize that we have a slight typo in the graphic down below there. It says Intaro, not Pintaro. But you know what? We got to chug along because I'm recording this video at 1 a.m. the night before. And you know what, guys? If you want daily Wardy content more than once, sometimes, like typically, we're going to have some hiccups. So without further ado, let's talk about Mr. Jonathan Pintaro. What are the Mets getting here and the young right-hander? And as you guys can see right away there, that is the numbers. That's what you're getting in Pintaro. So where did this news initially stem from? I'm sure is a question that many of you guys have. Let's get into, again, where all this originates from and all the details that you guys and gals may want to know about. So first and foremost, let me say on the Pintaro front, this is a fascinating call for David Stearns and the New York Mets. And the reason why it's immediately fascinating has everything to do with the fact that Pintaro is a guy that has been sneaky good, like sneaky really good so far this year that we've seen at the Rumble Pony level. And that's the crazy thing. Pintaro's only done this really at the Rumble Pony level, right? The towering right-hander that you guys can see right there has been putting up very respectable numbers, but as a true starter type for the Rumble Ponies this season. And per Will Salmon of The Athletic, who initially broke this news this past night, you know, as we see here, 11 games, 11 starts, 42 plus innings, a 3.4 ERA, 57 strikeouts across those 42 innings, and a 1.11 whip. And mind you, literally, I kid you not, 24 hours removed from the time of him being called up to the Syracuse Mets. He doesn't even get a chance to toe the rubber in Syracuse because he gets the immediate call now to the major league level. Now, the big question is, why did David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza feel so adamant that they need to go out and make some type of move like this to happen? And the simple answer and reason that is, everybody, is that the Mets need arms. I mean, after getting their bullpen absolutely rocked this past day, after Frankie Montas goes 5 shutty for you, and utilizing your bullpen plenty the night before, the Mets are in dire need of reinforcements, and they only have so many in AAA now to choose from. As crazy as that is to say, there's only so many times you can continue to go through the Chris Stevenskys and the Love Ladies of the world, whatever the guy's name is, Dickey, if you know who they just signed and gave up runs this past day. The Mets have an abundance of arms that are pretty much been fringe MLB relievers, kind of DFA type guys there that are just coming up for a cup of coffee and that be that. And while there is certainly a possibility that Pintaro is only up here for a cup of coffee, let's get into the plus stuff with him. Why the Mets see him as a not only relief fit for them, but a potential multi-in relief fit that could help them not just now, but potentially more and longer, more prolonged throughout the course of the 162. And as you guys can see here are some further numbers here on Mr. Pintaro, courtesy that you guys can see right here of a guy who does a fantastic job, that being in TJ Stats there on X. And shout out to my guy Isaac Groffman, who was our pitching contributor on the platform, as Isaac had the following to say about Pintaro, and it's the following, and I quote: Pintaro, currently for Isaac at least, has him ranked as the 11th top pitching prospect in the Mets organization. Now, I know you're probably saying to yourself, Wardy, why are we talking about a 27-year-old? You have to realize that these are late bloomers. Pintaro's only been in the Mets organization for just over a calendar year. The Mets signed him actually out of June of 2024 there, out of Indy Ball or wherever he was coming from. So Pintaro's been a late bloomer that we've seen, doing his best Huascar Brosman impression, because if you guys don't know, Brazo did not make the major leagues until he was already, in his late 20s, early 30s. So Pintaro hopefully doesn't get rocked the way that Brosman certainly did this past night, but let's get into what works so well for him, because as you guys can see there, as the cutter, the sinker, the change, the slide piece, the four seam, and the curve. But what's very notable here, everybody, is that he has a splitty, and that splitty is actually the changeup on the graphic that you guys see there. That has been calculated wrongly there per TJ Stats, and that's actually a splitty that he has sitting right around 85, 86 miles per hour, and it can be nasty according to our friend Isaac here. He says that his splitter has been absolutely nasty and will generate whiffs at the major league level. He has a low release point, fastball around the mid-90s that we see 95, 96 range, a smaller cutter and slider, and a slider with more sweep. So he has two variations of his slider, more of a sweeping slider that's obviously less velo and more of the horizontal movement. And then you have more of that hard slider naturally. We know that when it comes to splitties, sliders, sweepers, sinkers, that is what the Mets and their pitching staff loves to work with. So I actually do have a level of confidence in what Pintaro is going to be able to bring at the major league level. Again, the guy's been absolutely nasty this year that we've seen as a starter, 3.4 ERA, just over a 1 whip. Look at the career numbers in the minor leagues. As for obviously, there's a big question mark because this is Pintaro doing great things, but doing great things at just the AA level. So what is he going to provide for the Mets at the major leagues? That obviously is a big question that we have yet to find out all the answers to. And there are all the velos, guys, if you haven't gotten a chance to look at them yet. Again, 90 miles per hour is where he usually sits around the cutter, 95 or so there on the sink piece, as well as the four-seam fastball. The slider there, you're going to have right around 84. The splitty that they label the change here, right around 85, 86, and the curveball right around around 80. So you do have a true starter mix that's going to be utilized now as a reliever. Let's see if Pintaro can find himself having more success than the recent call-ups for the Mets, including guys like Brandon Waddell a little bit a while ago, among others. It would just be great to see if the Mets call up a multi-inning relief option for them, and they actually blossom the way that they're hopefully supposed to. So in the case of Pintaro, everybody, I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What's your thoughts about Mr. Jonathan Pintaro, the late blooming, high rising right-hander that has some gas and has some nice late movement, especially with the splitty, to do well against the opponent batters? Let's see if he can get some huge outs against the Atlanta Braves, or if he'll be added to the what has been a long assembly line of what have been batting practice reliever options for the Mets this season that they've had to call up in a pinch due to their lack of healthy arms and lack of available arms, for that matter, because their starters have not been going deep and their bullpens have been getting absolutely unbelievably exposed. So now, guys, going on from Pintaro, let's go from talking about Pintaro to talking about more on the relief front for a second. Let's transition from going from talking about him to getting into Mr. Brooks Raley, because we do have some notes here on Brooks Raley that I have to share for each and every one of you. And as you guys can probably see right there, they are as follows. Ignore the Luis Angel Acuna base knock. We'll get to that more later on the show, as we'll wrap up the show by breaking down the minor leagues from Port St. Lucie all the way up to the AAA level, as we always do. But as you guys can see right here, and shout out to Michael Mayer of Metsmerize for being first on the report. He's been so good. Michael always is there, kind of being on top of everything happening in the Mets minor league specifically. Does a great job there through Metsmerize. But Mayer stated the following: Brooks Raley through 3 rehab appearances for the St. Lucie Mets, 3 innings, 3 hits, 0 earned runs, 0 walks, 6 strikeouts. You want to know the most hilarious thing about Brooks Raley's dominant start thus far that we've seen at the rehab level, as we know he's going to continue to ramp up the next couple of weeks before being added to this Mets bullpen as a much greater lefty option of a southpaw versus a Jose Castillo, for example. If you guys did not watch this past night's game, don't bother trying to watch the highlights, not much of it, but we did see Jose Castillo come in and face 3 batters and not get a single effing out or so. So I'm not loving that. But what I am loving is Brooks Raley performing well, and the commonality that he's had with all 3 of his rehab outings to this point is that he's allowed 1 hit in each of them while striking out a pair in each of them as well. So Raley will not be in St. Lucie much longer. He'll gradually work his way up there throughout the minor leagues, and then when he is deemed ready based on workload and ramp up in health, the Mets will make the proper decision to bring him now up to the major league level. And speaking of bringing guys up to the major league level, everybody, that was what we all thought was going to be the case there for Mr. Sean Manaea not all that long ago, but now Sean Manaea has in fact faced a setback. And before we talk about Sean, let's also mention briefly here, everybody, as you guys can see, Francisco Alvarez exited this past night's game there for AAA Syracuse because of, thankfully, not a trade, but actually because of heat exhaustion. So after grounding into a double play there, which was not ideal to be getting the first inning there for Alvarez, we see him out of the ball game after the first inning, could not handle between the catching gear and this absurd heat wave that we have had on the East Coast this past couple of days and will continue to do so. That's what led to his demise and being exited from this ball game. But Alvarez is okay, nothing to worry about there, but I just want to relay that. Now, folks, let's hear from the horse's mouth himself and Sean Manaea and the latest that's going on with him, and maybe a little bit from Mendoza as well. Actually, let's start with David Stearns, and then we'll get on to Manaea.
You know, now that Mendoza just mentioned the news about Sean Manaea, what in your mind is a realistic expectation for him moving forward here?
Yeah, I don't think it slows us down too much. I think the goal right now is he's probably pitching in a rehab game a week from today, next Tuesday, next Wednesday. And if he's able to do that and that goes well, that would be the last one probably. And then we get him back. So this sets us back couple days, but at least right now we don't anticipate this necessarily resetting anything.
You can tell that Stearns lacked a sense of confidence there while breaking down Manaea, because I'm sure that he is, as you know, frustrated to a degree, as all Mets fans are right now, because we need reinforcements. Not only do we need the bats to start swinging and hitting, but we need this pitching to find its stability and consistency that helped carry this team throughout the first couple months of the season. And as Sean Manaea speaks about the injury himself, this is what he has to say. And for those that don't know, Manaea did in fact sustain a cortisone shot there after finding a loose body there in his elbow. And now let's get into his thoughts about it and what the next steps are going to be.
I know you just got the shot. They told us, do you think there's going to be some pain tolerance situations as the season goes on, or should that shot basically take care of you having to feel that?
I mean, I think that's a hope. I don't know for sure. You know, I've kind of heard some different views on it. So, just hoping for the best.
How do you think I know you just got the shot. They told us.
Do you expect to have an operation on this after the season?
I don't know. I know that's kind of on the table, but just trying to get through my next start.
There's going to be some pain tolerance.
Apologies, everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and, kind of fill in the box for what Sean and I was trying to say here. Yes, Sean is pretty much a guarantee, a lock to have a surgery this offseason. And the good news, everybody, as I just stated, it's the offseason, not now, as long as that holds true. And fingers crossed it does, because obviously the soreness is what led the Mets to do their imaging and notice that loose body. And this is a commonality in Major League Baseball, let alone other sports as well, where if they find a loose body, whether it's your elbow or different parts of said body, usually they handle that with an offseason surgery, as long as it's nothing too significant. So in the case of Manaea, we'll find out, obviously, to see how he heals, but he is shut down for the next 48 to 72 hours there from throwing entirely. And then from there, the Mets will obviously get him back up, get him back in a rehab outing. As long as that all goes well, then he'll be added back to this Mets rotation. So Sean Manaea is not far away, but it's a setback after another setback. And this is the same Sean Manaea who's supposed to have returned to the Mets pretty much a month ago, but his setback earlier this year with that oblique is what really kind of threw a wrench in all of that. So we await to find out more on the Simone Southpaw and the impact that he will have for the Mets this season. But obviously, certainly not ideal to have Sean be dropped, not able to pitch for a couple days now, and kind of take things from there, because the Mets need consistency and they need, most importantly, reliability with the rotation leading up to the MLB trade deadline. It goes without saying that Sean Manaea's lack of certainty on his health absolutely opens the floodgates more for the Mets to be considering key options via trade for starters. And they have not only been in that market actively, which is why we covered it plenty on the platform the past week, plus on the channel. Make sure to check out previous content in case you guys haven't already, including, the reports that we got into. But Sean Manaea is a very important piece of the puzzle. And if he is not going to be able to be like what he was last year, or is going to be it, but in a very limited sample size, then it's absolutely in the best interest of David Stearns of the Mets to, at minimum, be having these conversations happen with teams via trade, especially leading up closer to the deadline, once we have a greater idea as to who's actually selling versus who's buying. Because right now, there's way too much influx. There's way too many competing teams out of the National League. And while the American League is weak, there's still a question mark as to who's really going to be selling so far at this point in the season. But guys, on the talking front, on actually listening to the players and the coaches themselves, let's hear once more here, this time from Carlos Mendoza, on the latest at Jesse Winker.
Winker seems like he's been doing most things out there. Is he getting close to a rehab assignment?
Yeah, so he'll continue to pretty much go through full workouts here. The goal is hopefully he's DHing by the end of the weekend in a minor league rehab assignment.
Winker seems like he's been doing most.
Hey,
Carlos, I know this is getting ahead, but with Winker and the rehab assignment that's coming up, any idea how long, considering the injury that he had, that would take? Or
yeah, no, I mean he's gonna need at bats, that's for sure. So it's not gonna be a couple of games. He's going to be, he's probably play Sunday, then they're off on Monday, and then we'll put together the plan for Tuesday, like one on, one off, then back to back, and then we'll go from there. But when we're talking about that area, we have to watch him closely.
fair to say it would be a little bit longer than on the longer side of the
I wouldn't say longer, but again, we'll adjust accordingly. But I'm not anticipating this being just a couple of games.
So Mendoza reiterating to anyone who thinks that, oh, Winker's starting his rehab this weekend, that means he'll be back in a week or so. No, Jesse Winker's likely going to play at minimum 2 to 4 weeks there of rehab games. And there's a great chance that they're going to stretch it to really push more of that 30 days, meaning that Jesse Winker is not going to be returning to this Mets team in the near future. And we're looking at more than likely a post-All-Star break return for Jesse Winker to this team. And it makes sense from Winker and the Mets' point of view as well. Why try to rush Winker at this point when we're just a couple weeks out, obviously, from the All-Star break, and knowing that this is a Jesse Winker that, sustained a grade 2 oblique strain that happens to rail. Hilariously enough, the Mets are going to be adding back basically as kind of like a trade deadline acquisition again, is the reality of the circumstance here. And, it's unfortunate in the sense that I would have loved to see a full year with Jesse Winker. We're never going to get that because the reality is that even if Winker dominates, He's probably not going to be back with the Mets this year. It feels hard-fetched to believe that. I'll believe it when I see it. But I love Winker for the vibes. He's clutching up big time with big hits there that we have seen plenty in his limited sample sizes with the Mets going back to when he was acquired around the deadline last year from the Washington Nationals. He had some huge home runs down the stretch for the Mets, including that walk-off against the Baltimore Orioles, like I remember like it was yesterday, that won the series for the Mets, and then that kickstarted their West Coast trip there where they had a positive one when they were in Arizona, San Diego, and Chicago, played the White Sox. If you guys remember that stretch last summer, and then Winker was Mendoza for not playing Winker enough there in the NLCS. But I digress. Jesse Winker is an important bat, but he doesn't just bring the bat, he brings the only bode greatly for this team the way that it certainly did when he was first acquired by them a year or so ago. So that's what we have there on the Jesse Winker front. And on the David Stearns front, everybody, there isn't too much more that I really want to harp on. You know, Stearns spoke to the media this past day and gave us kind of more nothing burgers. What I relay to you guys is kind of more of what it's been in the case of David. But he and Carlos are very cognizant and wary of the woes the Mets have right now. And they are evaluating all options via trade leading up to the deadline that we're going to talk about plenty throughout this week as well. So be on the lookout. We do have more trade-related content coming out more than likely. But in the case here of David Stearns, Carlos Mendoza, and their latest remarks here with the media, this is a team and this is a coaching staff and this is a front office down that obviously is not happy and they're frustrated and they're trying to find the immediate solutions to rectify and make this team better than what they were 24 hours ago. But as we can see, being on a slide of dropping 10 or past 11 games is far from ideal. But we do know that both David and Carlos, especially Mendoza specifically from a day plus ago at the time of this video coming out, everybody did state, that, there's a clear problem pretty much with the bottom of the lineup, especially 5 through 9, 6 through 9. It's been a problem, and that's been a huge slog for them for the vast majority of the season. That, too, needs to get fixed. David Stearns knows it needs to get fixed, and that's why the Mets will be, at minimum, opportunistic, if I'm doing my best GM talk here, and them seeking and trying to find trades there at the Major League level leading up to said deadline. But, guys, last but not least, before we get out of here today, we do have some prospect updates to get into, as well as my closing remarks, what the Mets need to do right to get themselves out of the current rut that they still find themselves in north of 2 weeks later from the time of it initially starting, sadly. So let's begin here on the, let's begin here, everybody, on the Port St. Lucie front as the St. Lucie Mets, who are 38-31 on the season. Nice. They won 6-0 over the Hammerheads. And the key standouts here, everybody, were as follows. We saw Suarez rip his first home run of the year there that we saw there. And he was batting, where was he in the lineup? He was in left field and first base. They're batting right around 5th. And we also saw Wohoit, and probably butchering the name as well there for Will. But regardless, him bagging DH himself a home run in this one, his 9th of the season. And on the pitching end, everybody, we did see Jose Chirinos there in the minor leagues go 4 shutty, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts, 2.3 ERA. Brooks Raley had his scrolls inning that we just mentioned, and that was about that. So now let's get on now to the Brooklyn Cyclones. And the Cyclones just called up Carson Bench. Everybody. They just actually sent up Carson Bench and Jacob Reimer to the Rumble Pony level. But at the Cyclones level, they just added Colin Houck, first-round pick from 2023. That's been in St. Lucie up until this point. And Suero has been awesome among others in the slap. Everybody, they won 6-2 for the 49-21 Brooklyn Cyclones. Ewing in leadoff was tremendous, 2 for 4 with 2 runs scored there. That we saw from Mr. Ewing, a 299 average and an 805 OPS. He also has 34 stolen bases on the year. Kind of amazing. Baez, 3 for 4 game there from the huge power hitting shortstop infielder DH, 269 average, 766 OPS. Eli Serrano went 0 but did have a pair of RBIs and just under 800 OPS. Suero, the Bronx native who plays catcher, who can play left field and first base, 2 for 4 with a run scored and an RBI. Uber athletic player the Mets have in the farm here, 258 average, 861 OPS. Marco Vargas at DH, a part of the David Robertson trade with the Miami Marlins back in 2023 trade deadline. Right around there, Vargas 2 for 4 game, 260 average, 642 OPS. Boston Barrow continues his underwhelming play this season, sadly, and 0 there at second base. Houck with an 0 as well. He's looking for his first hit there at this level. And on the pitching end, everybody, we saw Mr. Nate Dome go 4 innings of 2 earned run baseball with 1 walk and 4 strikeouts, a 2.08 ERA there. Not too shabby if you ask me. We saw Ramon Gomez go .2 scoreless innings, and that's nice for Ramon, who's a flame-throwing right-handed option the Mets have there. And then as we get to the Rumble Pony level, Carson Bench and Jacob Reimer have not recorded hits yet there at the Rumble Pony level, but the Rumble Ponies did have a couple hits in this 4 4-3 loss, where they only had 4 hits to 11 of the Sea Dogs. But the notables, everybody, were LaRusso ripping his 18th double this season. We saw Ryan Clifford rip his 13th home run of the year. Clifford with 831 average, 231 on the average there, and an 831 on the OPS is what I meant to say. Jet Williams 1-for-4 batting leadoff, this time at second base today. 297 average and 919 OPS. We know Williams will be called up very soon to the Syracuse level. And Kevin Parada, productive again, up to a 232 average and 715 OPS. This is important, guys, because Kevin Parada was horrendous throughout the first month plus of the season. He's really picked things up since then over the past, all June long, he's been tearing the cover off the baseball. And on the pitching end, everybody, we saw Weniger go 5 innings of 8 hit, 2 earned run baseball, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, 2.9 ERA there for the right-hander. Guzman went 1 shutty with a sub-3 ERA, and Foster with a 1 shutty with a 1.45 ERA. At the Syracuse Mets level, they're playing good baseball now, everybody, because they have reinforcements. Luis Angel Acuna batting leadoff 3-for-4 with an RBI, because of course he is there. Mark Vientos 0-for at the third base there at the hot corner, but did have 2 runs scored and 2 walks. Mets blew the doors off the Red Wings in this one, winning by a whopping score of 12-5. Drew Gilbert moved lower in the order, and I think that's best for him. That we see, including his 12th double this season there, batting with just a 685 OPS, has a lot more work to do. Pablo Reyes there at second base, 1-for-4 with a run score, 500 average, just under 1,300 OPS there, everybody. And in case you guys don't know, Mr. Pablo Reyes, Pablo, if I'm not mistaken, was in the Mets organization a year ago, parted with and then came back. I could be wrong. Maybe he's been with the team the whole time, but I'm almost certain that he was with different teams last year. And he was. I was right. Because Pablo Reyes was picked up by the Red Sox last year as well. He was with the Red Sox, then with the Mets that we saw, and now with the Mets. Oh, he must have been out with injury. That makes sense. So Pablo Reyes is back, and he's being productive there for the Syracuse Mets team. We saw VR go 0-for in this one. Joey Meneses 2-for-4 at DH, 744 OPS. Jackson Reitz had a massive 5 RBI game, not 1, but 2 home runs. 2 home runs, 10 total on the year for Jackson Reitz. You want to know why he's batting? $180 with 740 OPS, because of course he is. Such bizarre numbers. Celestino in right field, 2-for-5 with a run scored and an RBI, 286 average, 759 OPS. And that pretty much is all she wrote there. Francisco Alvarez only had 1 at-bat, and then Reitz came in and tore the cover off the baseball. Justin Hageman won 4.2 innings of 3 earned run baseball. Austin Warren won 1.1 innings of 1 earned run baseball. Merriweather allowed 1 earned run on no outs. Don't love that. Corello, who looked fantastic in his Syracuse debut there, everybody, 2 scoreless innings. He was just called up, for those that don't know, there from the Rumble Pony level. 3 strikeouts. He looked fantastic. And Justin Garza, who the Mets sent down as a recent there, had himself a scoreless inning of work there for the Syracuse Mets. So, folks, that is about going to do it, everybody, for our latest not only prospect report, but all the latest here at Mets Land when breaking down what's happening with their call-up and Mr. Jonathan Pintaro, Manaea, Brooks Raley, Jesse Winker, David Stearns, and a whole lot more. So my closing remarks, everybody, before we get out of here are as follows. The boys got to wake up. I can't be screaming and sweating and, looking like an absolute schmuck in my post-game shows for that much longer. I need to see this Mets team actually start to wake up, make some proper adjustments. I know they have such a gauntlet right now between their schedule, their inconsistencies, and just playing bad baseball. Nothing that drives me more nuts as a Mets fan than to see this team drop games in a horrendous fashion, let alone to their rivals the way that they have done now 9 of their past 10 games. Absolutely horrendous, or close to what it feels like, because they've dropped already 5 to the Braves and they've dropped 2 to the Phillies. So they're not looking good. 7 losses to just 1 win against the rivals over the stretch. And overall, the Mets are just 1-10 over their past 11. Something has to give, something has to change. We know we need bullpen reinforcements. We'll see what Pintaro brings right away. We know the Mets obviously need offensive reinforcements, but Mark Vientos isn't getting the call just yet. We're going to wait when that's going to happen this week. So a lot of things are in flux and a lot of turmoil right now in Mets land. My question for you guys before I get out of here is as follows. What do you think is going to ultimately change for the Mets should they be able to get out of the rut that they currently find themselves in? What do you think is going to happen either externally or internally for the Mets to get back in a groove and get back to being the team that we hope to see dominate throughout the good chunk of the 162 and most certainly postseason play? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, everybody. Thank you so much for chiming in for our latest Big Mets Update segment. Check out our friends again at Fume, the sponsor of today's video, by checking it out down below in the description should you guys have interest, and I'll see you all in the next one, win, lose, or draw. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.